Okay. Well, welcome to this this third module of space-time structures, and today we're going to see something which I would say it is probably the most complex, refined, sophisticated technology out of these space-time structures. Yeah. So in that complexity, I'm going to do the best effort I can. I'm just going to close the. To kind of put it into words, but maybe I would recommend, especially with this part, for an area of you just to kind of receive it in another kind of aspects of your consciousness. Yeah, of course, you're going to have the conscious participation and the making meaning participation, of course. But it is very, for me, it's fascinating. It's fascinating also what I've been able to discover from it. But it does take some time of assimilation. It's like, just put an analogy. From now, we've been studying English, but now we're going to start studying Chinese or one of these hard languages. Okay, so there's a bit more kind of like a time to assimilate it. Yeah. Oh, Susan. Susan's. Oops, forgot about the time change here. We're going to be a little late. No, because okay, yeah, Laura, thanks. If you could just clarify them over there.
It's confusing because it never changes in Argentina. People assume it changes everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, Argentina, there's no changes.
No.
It's always the same. Quite a pity because the beginning is pretty important to follow this. But well, they've got the recording. So, well, what this technology, space-time structure technology, is called is TUMI. TUMI, TUMI. I'll look into the why it's called that. You know, where does that name come from, and what are the implications of that name? But first, to say that this is more about. It's also it's a tool to go deeper into the understanding of each individual antenna. So the individual antenna has a process of development. Yeah, it has a process of neurological development. Each personal antenna. That personal development takes time. Yeah. And there are certain ages, well, as we've been seeing, days of life where there are inflection points. Okay, so there is a kind of structure of development, and what this technology does, it just kind of gives us the kind of the clue moments of that neurological development. Yeah. So, well, let's go a bit back to, let me open this, what we call the ring of fire. Okay. Wait, let's see if I can change it here. Remember these, which was the last 13 days of the year, and it made this kind of clock. Okay, this integration of the consciousness of that year and the disintegration for opening to the next year. Yeah, so it's a point of integration, disintegration. So it's a ring of fire. It's like a melting pot. It's like the example that I gave you is like the Earth provides each of us, let's say a quantity of its energy. Well, let's put a quantity of metal, of gold, to each of us. Let's take gold, which is a good metal to use. So a quantity of gold. Okay, so it provides you that is a potential. Now, in each of us, we are out of that gold during that year. We're gonna use it for something. We're gonna create a jewelry. Yeah. We're going to create a jewel according to the frequency, or the, you see that you got the parties which are theme parties, like you dress up as superheroes or as, so each year is a theme. And let's say that the gold, the oro, which has a lot to do with the tumi, we'll get into that, the oro, the gold, is like, it's like potential consciousness, yeah? But out of that, you have to make something. You have to make a jewelry. So you have to do out of that which is impersonal, it belongs to the global consciousness of Earth, it provides you a quantity, and you are going to elaborate something out of that, okay? So it's also like giving you a credit, like a bank that gives you credit, and you say, okay, I'm going to invest, I'm going to do this, that, and whatever. But there's a moment after that you have to kind of prove what you're doing, So this is the moment that the ring of fire, it's where you give that jewelry back, and okay, this is working, this is not working, this is okay, this is improved, and then it's like the ring of fire is like a melting pot. So it integrates that, but it also melts that. In Spanish, there's two words. It's fundir is to melt, fundar is to found something new. So the end of the year, it's kind of like where all that melts, and it refunds in a new potential, a new credit of the following year. Now, the credits of the following year also depends on the maturity, responsibility, involvement, and quality that each individual provides. Okay, so there is a individual kind of, well, these last days are sequenced in this manner that is here, and it follows the 4 quadrants that we've been seeing. Remember the top and the bottom, the left and the right, to do that integration, because at the end, what is integrating is Earth is receiving its credit from the sun, it processes it, and it invests in it's like society, you see, society that invests in education, in its citizens, but why? Okay, and those citizens. But what is the purpose of that credit? It's not a donation. That's first thing. Let's be clear. Life is not a gift. It's not a donation, because life is expecting something. It's expecting an evolution or an increase of value. So the only way that the global consciousness increases its value, it's by its individual or particles to do a new contribution. Yeah. So so that's these last 13 days of the year. Now, the last 13 days of the year, it's also like the future of the year. It's also like seeing the purpose, the direction. It's like the last chapter of a series. Okay. It includes everything, and then it gives you like, where was the whole story going, like, so that's what it's got. And now the thing is, this is very important. Whenever somebody is born, what is that? A new particle, a new cell, That cell, when it's born, it is already connecting with the purpose of the year that it's born. Meaning, the people, so when a character comes into the play, it's already known by the scripts that there is a future purpose for that character. Okay, so this is something that we're going to see a relationship between the birth of a person and how the future is kind of, it's like the future is configuring the steps of growth. Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, okay, you got a seed that activates, but already in the negative you've got the direction, like the fruit, and the fruit knows that there's steps of process. Okay, so there's a big relationship between our birth date, the moment we were born, with a kind of connection with the future of the year. Yeah, with the ring of fire. But what we are interested, so this is the ring of fire, but the one that we're welcome. Have you guys been able to follow the ones that are coming? Wait.
Oh,
just logged in?
yeah, just got here, so I'll try to catch up.
Okay, no worries. We just kind of.
I'm just here too, David.
You just arrived?
Yeah, I've just arrived too. I got the hours wrong.
Yeah, there's that time change.
Is that time?
In Argentina, there's no time change. Okay, well, one way of sequencing this is that top part, it's more about the sun. It's in Spanish, this. What do you want? To eat? We could say it's more, that top part, it's more, we could say the solar axis, ejes axis, okay? That bottom is connecting with the kind of like the Earth axis, 360 degrees, 360 at the bottom. And 353 is what we call the processor. It's processing, yeah? It's processing the abstract and the concrete. It's processing the left and the right. So it's a center which is processing, okay? Now, this is like the sun in the horizon. I'll show you in a minute that. This is like it's like if you're on Earth and you're seeing the sun in the horizon, you know? That would be the kind of a way of viewing it. So taking that, the actual way that the Tumi is taken, it is like this. So one thing is the ring of fire, one thing is the Tumi. As you can see, the top, the points that connect on the top quadrants are not there. Why is that? Because the Tumi is going to focus on the individual antenna. So it's going to go on it's going to go at the bottom areas. Remember that the top is more impersonal and the bottom is more personal. Okay. So we're not so much interested in those others because that's something that the impersonal consciousness of Earth is going to be configuring. We're going to be taking more the ones at the bottom. Yeah. And as you can see, but what does stay is this vertical axis with the top part. Okay. That does stay. Why is that? Because if you disconnect that, you disconnect it to the, you disconnect it to that. I'm going to use this analogy of quantum physics, okay? You see that we've got wave and the particle? The wave and the particle, the wave and the particle. Okay, we could say that the wave consciousness it's more abstract, isn't it? Yeah. And the wave is kind of checking possibilities. And the particle is more concrete. It is fixing, it's manifesting one of those possibilities, yeah? Our consciousness is, especially if we are in a biology, we participate in both. We have a wave consciousness and we have a particle consciousness. Now, the wave consciousness is going to be more connected on that 354 at the top, okay? The particle consciousness is more connected with that 360 at the bottom, like the gravity of the particle. 353, now I'm going in this middle axis there, yeah? 353 is a processor. It's the processor between wave consciousness and particle consciousness, okay? So one way of seeing also the Dumi is how our wave aspect, our wave consciousness, our abstract consciousness, or another word that is given is digital consciousness. So the top is more digital consciousness and the bottom is more analogical consciousness. And this has to also do with two ways of processing information, isn't it? Yeah, digital and analogical. Yeah, digital has this more abstraction where, you know, it's like you can code it into numbers, and you can keep that information. Analogical is not that way. It's like analogical, you have to follow all the steps. It's like you know, music, when it's recorded analogical, it's better quality most of the time because it doesn't miss any of the parts, because it's like the whole sequence. Yeah. So when we're talking about analogical, we're talking more about the particle. We're talking more about the concrete, physical biology. When we're talking about the wave consciousness, we're talking about something which is more abstract, more digital. So the Dumi basically is, how does our wave consciousness condense into a particle? What is the process of that? And the way that it does condense into a particle consciousness provides that particle with a neurological structure. What does a neurological structure means? It means, because our neurology is a processor, in a way, yeah? It's just, in the same way that the Earth has its processor, but it provides each of its particles an individual processor. The way that I process as a particle has to do with a function. So, meaning, when you are born, you're born already with a function, a direction, a purpose, a way of operating, like an own operation, what's it called? Operating system, like a software, yeah, in your hardware. And that has to do with what is your, like a cell, you know, it's like it has a determined function, or the same way. But it takes the time to develop that function, and it takes specific dates, yeah? Because remember that the time is connected with a setting in consciousness, yeah? Is that, so like 354, that is kind of like 354, 353 would be, let's put it this way, it's like a wave consciousness connecting with a processor, and 360, it's when that is condensed, that consciousness is fully condensed into a particle. Yeah. Now, it's a challenge to explain that. Let's now maybe go with the name Dumi. Okay. Well, why is it called Dumi? Okay. Where did that name come from? Yeah. Well, one thing, it comes from Peru, okay? In Peru, you have these, there's this very, very common, if you go to Peru, you see it everywhere. It's like this common image that you see everywhere, which is this one here. And now I'll tell you why Peru is important with all this. Probably you recognize it. It's this here, this image here. You guys recognize it? Have you seen it before? It's a tumi. As you can see, well, one thing, it has the form, it has that semicircle at the end, and it has that kind of line and connected at the top, yeah? And okay, it comes from Peru. That's the first thing, from Peru. Peru, in this process, has been very, 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 very important for many different reasons. Well, one reason is that the place where this kind of begins to activate within Ale, yeah, which is just it's a global transference of a new, we could say, a new aspect of the Earth's consciousness is transferred into a particle. Yeah, so it's not Ale. It's just it's like the first bacteria that is injected with a virus. You know what I mean? Virus seeing it as new information. So always a virus has to find, a virus is like an abstract possibility. Yeah, abstract. It's a digit. It's like digital. It hasn't got an existence, but it has got information. So if that, like always, what it's going to require, it's like a bacteria, something that is living, yeah, to be introduced in the body. So it starts with one, but then rapidly that virus or that new information that was able to condense and install itself in biology, it begins to transfer to the rest of the body. But it always starts with one person or one cell, one bacteria. Without that, that virus just stays as abstract information. It doesn't do anything. So it needs that to manifest itself, yeah. But when it manifests, so when the Earth consciousness or an abstract aspect of it, of the Earth consciousness, which is also relating with the sun, yeah. And the sun is a neuron of the expressed universe of nothingness, yeah. So understand the different sequences, yeah. So it has to. It introduces into one aspect, but then that once it's condensed, once it is received, that begins to have a chain effect all over the body. Yeah? If the body can manage that new information, it has a mutation. If it can't, it dies. That's why there's this idea that viruses are something bad, because most of the time it's like a trial error. Most of the time, the experiment tends to go like 99 fails and then you get a 1 right. But the 1 right changes the whole thing. It's like the Edison kind of bulb thing, you know? It's like, okay, you screwed up many times because, okay, this is a bit cold, but from the Earth perspective, for a cell to die, it's not such a big deal. It's because it's going to renew. It's like, it's a big deal, of course, for us, for an individual, or, you know, for my daughter, you know, in that personal relationship, of course, it's a big deal. But from the Earth perspective, it's like, it's not such a big deal. Yeah. So the virus, in the sense, is it's going to take a lot of times for it to try until it can actually be received. Okay. So we got that there. Why I'm saying this, because all this story is because Peru's 5-1. Okay, 5-1. It's like that's abstract logic. That's abstract consciousness, but it's inner biology. See? There's a story to the whole thing because there's this very famous doctor of Peru. His name is Alcides Carrion, and he's well known because he did something which was to see the effects of a virus on a human being. And of course, there wasn't a lot of volunteers. What he did was do it on himself. This has to do with a quality of Peru. Peru is like, it puts the body, you know? It's like, okay, I'll volunteer, I'll do it. So, and if it's a distortion, I will bring it, I'll condense it, I'll manifest it. So basically, the Tumi has to do with this. It's how that abstract consciousness or that global consciousness that wave consciousness can condense into a particle, okay? What did they used to use this also, and it's also a neurological configuration, yeah? And one of the reasons, it was a ceremony kind of knife, very, very, very sharp. And well, one of the first people to ever do brain surgeries were the Peruvians. They would use this. I'm not sure how successful they were, but they would use this knife in the case that they would, you know, somebody would have a problem, whatever, and they would do brain surgeries with it. So what I'm also connecting this is that this is kind of like the brain surgery. It's like a brain, it's like opening the brain to configure it. Yeah. But the doctor who does it, it's we're in better hands, let's say. It's earth consciousness. Yeah. So that's one of them. And look, there's another drawing here. Let's stop. Let's see if I can change it and you can still see it. Let me see. Can you guys see that change? No. Okay. Okay, so I have to stop share. This is another drawing. It's just to give you that image of that kind of sun horizon. So like the sun is a wave consciousness, okay? It's a wave. The thing is that is kind of going to be received into the 360 of the Earth, which is its maximum gravity. So it's like that wave hasn't got a lot of gravity. You know? It's like, ooh, it's free and flexible and blah, blah. But when it wants to go into it wants to install itself into a bacteria, it has to go into that gravity. Because that gravity is condensation of a wave consciousness into existence. The thing that tends to happen is that wave consciousness condenses so much that it disconnects from the, so it feels trapped. That's where you get the kind of, you know, this kind of spiritual need of people like to connect with that wave consciousness, because it's like it disconnects consciously. It doesn't rarely disconnect. It disconnects, you know, the consciously you just don't remember. Which also has a purpose, because it has the purpose of being completely involved in your existence. Yeah, so that's where you get this kind of amnesia, you could say. But also there's an issue of, it does create a kind of, have you seen this movie of the, which has been very well known, in Spanish it's the Joker, the new Joker movie, which is excellent. Oof. You have to see it. It is excellent movie. It's not, I wouldn't, you know, if you want to have I'm not sure, a light romantic evening, don't watch that movie. But if you want some hardcore, Because what I think, or what I got out of it, it expresses that disconnection. It expresses that I'm in this body kind of thing, and I'm disconnected. There's other bodies over there, but there's no interrelation, there's no interconnection. It's just me and the world. And the world doesn't accept me, so what am I going to do? Destroy the world. But, and it has that kind of, you know, the consequences of the disconnection. So this is kind of, because the important, and then there's other people is like, oh, I want to leave the body. Probably you've heard the story before, yeah? The body is bad, gravity is bad, and I want to leave the particle. I want to be limited. I don't want to be limited and all that. I want to leave. So I'm going to take some drug in the jungle or whatever, yeah? That also has to do with this non-acceptance of self-limitation, which is very important for the wave consciousness to have a specific manifestation, you see? So self-limitation, because that's what nothingness does, it self-limitates itself, unfoldment, to be able to condense into a specific biological expression, yeah? I would say read this more from a physics point of view than from a spiritual point of view, because from a, and even more important, if you can connect just with a self-recognition, you know, like clean self-recognition inside, that there is this area of this wave consciousness participating in this body particle consciousness. But I think the more kind of spirituality, what happens, it mystifies something which is just, it's just a reality, you know. So I think spirituality is more like, you know, when we try to explain thunder before science, and would say it's like Zeus getting angry and throwing, it's like, it's just immature. I feel it very immature, you know, like, so why would I say that? Because it's going to give you this magical thinking, which is not the intention. This is really just trying to understand who we are interdimensionally. We can't only just understand ourselves in one, like what science does, which is very logical, but only concentrated on one dimension or in one area of our existence, which is very good, but for a lot of people, they know that that's just not enough. Just meet these kind of materialist science people, and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to end up like you, because there's something that they negate, you know? It's like, no. Anything to do with abstract consciousness, what you're talking about, no. You know, so, but then we go into this other area, which is like the, you know, the magical thinking kind of, it's like it sees the abstract as how we've been seeing the abstract, like, you know, with a lot of storytelling thing. So I would say that the time of, what did Carl Jung call it? He called it, to be able to explain different aspects of our consciousness, which are not all just
archetype.
The time of archetypes, it's over, I would say, and it's the time of axioms, axiomatic points of view. You know, archetypes still have that storytelling thing, and axioms, it's like, it's more precise. It's like, if I want to know how to code a program, I don't need a, you know, like an archetype story. I just need a logic. I need axioms. And you know what axioms are? Like the structure. I need this axiomatic structure aspect, and to be able to just kind of understand it how it is, you know, because what starts to become more interesting is more reality as it is than the fantasy storytelling of reality. You know, so it's more like science is going to give you more clues than poetry, you know. Now you're going to say, okay, but what about poetry and art? Is that art has its area, but what art tends to do is camouflage reality. Okay, now that is an art that is hiding away from what's real. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with art. What I'm saying is that art is it's a secondary expression of science, and science is a secondary expression of consciousness. You know, I would kind of see it in that order. Like consciousness, science, art. And art, what it does, it expresses what has been configured in science, you know, what we can kind of make sense of, but that comes from another deeper area of consciousness, yeah? So art is full of like the myths and the dun and the dun, and I'm not sure if it happens to you guys, but sometimes, you know, when I hear an artist, you know, one of these kind of bohemian blah 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 people, I prefer science people. It's because there's no bullshit. You know what I mean? It's like there's no decoration. It's like, you know, I am interested in truth and beauty, but beauty that expresses truth. And there's a point where I just see something which is not, it's like, I'm trying to look for the English word. Yeah, it's self-denying it's like decorating something to not see it in a way. So that's why art has been used so much to and it's not art in itself, it's the way that art is used, but what is it being used? To stimulate and to deceive. Art has been used by dictators with songs and images. Like communism only exists in paintings. Successfully, I'm saying, you know, it's like there's no society that ends up like that. Only in the painting. In the paintings, it looks very good. In the songs, it's beautiful. But in the reality, it's like it's just a way of saying, because a lot of like the artists are, you know, there's got this the thing of that it's more interesting the image than the reality. You see it, and it's like, no, it's more important the reality than the image. And if you want to give me an expression, bring it out of reality. You see that? I don't know why I'm talking about this, but let me see. I always had the feeling the logic would make more sense to scientists than so. It should, yeah. The thing is that, you see, science is a tool, but there are because you have to have open within you and awaken, and I think it's just something that awakens, that you begin to self-recognize other areas of life in consciousness. When you can bring that into science, beautiful. And this logic has a bigger connection with a scientist than with an artist, especially not all artists, especially these kind of this overrated, overvalued, self-image projected artists, people, you know. And it's all beautiful in the image that they give, but then it's not real in their life. You see what I mean? That doesn't happen so much with science people, because they haven't got such an overprice. They don't overprice themselves so much because they are more connected with what's real. The only thing is that they reduce it to one dimension. That's what tends to happen with the science. They just kind of, they close it there. That's it. That's where it all began, you know? But yeah, I would say that. That's why a lot of people who are very, you know, much connected into the spiritual, you know, there's some things of logic that it's not nice for them. I feel is that it's quite hard when you have created your whole identity on an image. It's pretty hard to see that self-deception. when something is kind of like, okay, yeah, beautiful. It's like if I want to put an electrical system in my house, you know, and an artist comes and he starts telling me, you know, I'm going to, there's a moment that I'm going to know the difference between the artist is going to sell it very well, you know, the electrical system and it's going to do all that. Or do I want an electrician? So, and I'm going to recognize which one works and which one doesn't, because one is going to work more with an image, like marketing, and the one's going to work more with a reality. And at the end of the day, what works is reality. You see, but again, I'm not saying that art is an expression of everything is art, but art comes from science, or art should have it should see that its expression has to be a contribution into reality. Yeah, and that comes from something which has a coherency, a linear coherency. We could say that is the science, linear coherency, and that is increased by a non-linear coherency, science. Sorry, consciousness. And see that these great scientists, always like, you know, like Tesla or Einstein, these kind of scientists knew that there was another level of coherency from which was a source for science. So science wasn't the source. It was something that was putting it into a neurology, linear coherency. Yeah? And a lot of them were artists. They did art. But you see, they didn't have an overvalued price. It was just an expression. Art is that area of expression. Now, do you want to express a fantasy or do you want to express reality? Because that's, I think, what consciousness really, it wants to know, not an image of itself, but you know, it wants to really know itself. So then you stop seeing Zeus getting angry from the skies and throwing, you know, this very sophisticated weapon down, and you just see, okay, it's a difference of potential between negative and positive. But those who are very connected to the romantic story, it's going to be, no, don't take away my story, you know. That's why it could be painful in a way. And there's a lot of artists that don't have self-pricing. They don't have overvalue. They don't have the whole mental masturbation kind of thing. And they just people who want to express through instrument, but it's very different. You can sense the difference. You can notice the difference of the blah, 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 and just somebody who's self-expressing, you know. Okay. I really went into a different direction, but okay, so you see that kind of, so you got that wave consciousness from the sun and it's coming down into, you know, condensing, yeah. Now we're going to see that in an individual, that condensation, that word, condensation, I think. So, but another reason why it's called Tumi is not only because of this, what I've explained now. It's because, remember that we had the left as ma, as like the feminine, or you know, the question or the limitation. And ba is more that kind of like the masculine, or the answer, the potential, and the, well, when we see the Tumi, we're going to give it two different names, yeah, which is me. Let me put the, because to understand what we could say a neurological structure, we have to take into consideration these two principles. Now, when these two principles are expressed more in a neurological processor, it's gonna take this form here. And if you see on the left, it has the mi, and on the right, it has the tu. Okay, mi in Spanish, well, is me, and tu is you, okay? What does that mean? What does that mean? That the way that we operate as a particle has to do of how do we self-define ourselves, me, and how do we connect with ourselves, me, and how do we relate with the context, tu. So the left has more to do with a self-definition, yeah? The self-limitation, self-definition. It's what makes me me, you can say. So the definition of the limitation, yeah? Now, the connection of the particle, yeah? It's the connection. But then when the particle has a formation and a connection with itself, it's going to interconnect with the context. So sometimes I say me, it's like the left and right brain, kind of thing. Like the left brain tends to see separate things. Like the typical analogy is it'll see trees. Okay. The right is going to see systems. It's going to see the forest. But we need both. Yeah? Okay, but that we're doing it all the time. And the way that I process me and able to relate with tu is different in each person. It's very different. It's like literally we live in the same earth in different worlds. And those different worlds all have a purpose for the same earth, okay? So that's also the reason why it's called tu me. Yeah, it's like the tu a me. It's also how the way that the personal antenna and the way that that wave is condensed and processed is going to give it a way of self-relationship and a way of interrelationship. Yeah. And then if you see in the middle, there's something that puts yo in the middle there. Okay. That middle, which is connecting the top part of the wave consciousness, the bottom part of the particle consciousness, and then the processor, like that, yeah? That we're gonna call it the yo, the yo. Now, yo means I, not me, I. Now, there's a big difference between me and I, because me is personal. I is impersonal, meaning that what is connecting me and the world is not me, it's I. It's the impersonal consciousness. It's the also we call it the axis of the membrane. This also has another reason, beautifully explained by my friend, that yo, now this is where the Spanish lesson comes in. Yo, well, the conjunction E is and. It's and. It's where it's like this and this. It's like together. It's an integration. Yeah, it's an inclusion. But O is like or, this or that. So it's a selection. Now the yo, it's that which unifies and separates, like a membrane. So there is an impersonal consciousness connecting with me and tu, yeah, me, tu, and but at the same time, it's making a differentiation, yeah. So like because if not, it's just going to be fusion, and fusion is wave consciousness. And what we need at the bottom is not fusion. We need differentiation and interconnection. See? So this is the membrane. So it's like if we are made out of three qualities in our particle. Well, one is that we have a wave consciousness and a particle consciousness and a process. Well, that would be connected to this one, yeah. But then we have the way that I self-define, or the way that I am self-defined, and the way that I relate. So we're going to have that me, that tú, and that yo. And there's just a different way of configuring the me. This I sometimes say it's content consciousness. This is system consciousness, systems of consciousness. Like, because you see the system, the interrelationship. So if you see the contents in the system, you have a space-time consciousness. You see, because space-time consciousness has to take those two into consideration, you know, the part and the totality and its relationship. Good. So I think that is explained. Okay, so you see we have the 353 and then it opens 357. Okay, so that is establishing a limit. That it's like a limit. And whenever you establish a limit, 363, you're establishing a function or a contribution in the system. So we say the 357 is establishing a limitation. 363 is establishing, how can I say, the potential of that limitation. Look, if you can't really develop a potential if you don't have a boundary. Let me give you an example. It's like, I have to, look, I'm very good at wood crafting. I'm very, very good. Meaning, I have an invisible ability of crafting, but to be able to express that potential, I have to know how much wood I have. So without the limitation, without knowing the limitation, I can't really see what is the extension of the potential that that limitation has. You see? So I can be excellent wood crafter, but there's no wood. Or there's very little wood. So I have to, you see, that's the key, is that if I don't know my limitations and I am self-denying my limitations, I'm not going to work. That's why I'm saying when, you know, what I see about the artists, they self-deny their limitation. Or they sell themselves for a price. It's like the Argentinian joke. They say, what is the best business in the world? Yeah, it's to buy an Argentina for what it's worth and to sell it for what that Argentina think it's worth. Yeah. No offense, Laura. It's not. You're out of here. But what I'm saying is the problem of overvaluing and not really determining your limits is that you are going to be fooling your potential. You're not going to be fulfilling, you're going to be fooling your potential. So meaning that it's very important, this aspect of the past consciousness, which allows me to see my limits. Because when I see my limits, and this is the key word, when I recognize my limits and I self-accept them, then I can exploit them. I can extract its potential. Because if I'm not self-accepting it, that begins an internal problem in the me. Because you have the story that you should have this or that, or so you're not self-accepting your position. Because me, it's about locating your position. Tú is about interconnecting that position in a system. Yeah. But if you don't know where you're located and you're like, how can I say? You think that yeah, you're not well located. You think that you're in one area, but you're not there because you're telling yourself a lie or whatever. Well, then you're not going to be able to work in the interconnection. Yeah? So you're not going to be useful. You're not going to be a useful device if you're not saying, okay, I'm here, wherever that place is. You know, And one thing is that one thing is where I am, and one thing is where I think I am, and one thing is where I wish I would be. We all have these things going on. So what we have to do is, how do I know where I am? By seeing where I think I am, and by seeing where I wish I would be. Because if I were there, I wouldn't wish it. So I say it in inverse logic. See where you wish to be to accept where you are. You know. Okay. Well, this is just the kind of general explanation. Now I'm going to go. Let's have a little break now, because now I'm going to go into how does the calculation of the dates work. How does this system work in the establishments of the dates, which is going to configure our processor, which is going to configure our left, and the development of that, the 360. Like each of these points is touching, how can I say, a development item, like a point of development. Yeah. I think the two important ones in this, and it follows the same structure, is that the 354 is talking about our wave consciousness. 353 is the processor, and there's this movement of connecting with the processor. That's what we call birth. Okay. Of course, there's a preview to that, but and then it's going to have this condensation in 360, but to have the condensation consciousness in 360, it takes time. It takes more or less 6 years to do that. And then after that, you're going to go into another process, which is not the formation of your particle, it's about the relationship with the context. Those two come together in the center again, and we have what we call the neurological, a space-time personal consciousness configuration, yeah? Where I can manage my individuality and my or I begin to have the formation of my individuality and my interconnectivity. You see? So far, and I would repeat again that this is by far what we're going to see, or I do see that this is the most complex technology of what we're going to see. Like, it doesn't get more complex, or it doesn't get more detailed and sophisticated than the Dumi. It's because here everything is here. Everything, all the things that we've been seeing, it's all in this tool. It's all here. You know, like the quadrants, the left, the right, the up and down, the future of the year. Yeah, it's just kind of all here. A lot of people's like, without knowing anything of the logic, and just like, can you do my Dumi? It's like, it just doesn't, it's not going to make sense, you know? It's like, can you do my Dumi and tell me, how can I say, it's like, can you solve this? A person that is beginning to learn how the numbers, and says, can you solve this equation, you know, a complex equation, and show me the result? Okay, I can show you the result, but I don't think you're going to have the awareness of the process of that result. You know, like, so this kind of thing of do me the Dumi, it's like, it's not the, of course, the person that has got a process in this and says, okay, look, there's some difficulty for me to, okay, that I understand. But it's not so, you know, not so simple as do my astrological. I can kind of, you know, you do a reading and you give an answer, but I don't think that way of seeing it that's not the correct way. You know, like, I'm going to read your astrological. This is about self-discovery, you know, you can have some help in the parameters, but it's not about somebody telling or decoding you. It's something that it's more, it's a tool to see more very fine, sophisticated aspects of your configuration. Yeah, but it's more something to reflect upon. Yeah. Okay, guys. So no questions. Just one thing is that there tends to be people who are more connected with their wave consciousness. So that's that consciousness before you're born, okay? That 354, that wave consciousness. And there's other people that are much more connected with their particle consciousness. This tends to happen. It's not like you perfectly align. It tends to happen that there's more. I'll give you a simple clue. Whenever an emotion appears in your body, are you the kind of person who says, I am sad within, or are you the kind of person who can recognize sadness within occurring? Because a wave consciousness, how can I say, it's not glued to the body. A wave consciousness has this, it has like a previous separation. But when somebody is more particle, it's more kind of, what tends to happen, an emotion occurs here, and the wave consciousness, it's stuck there. So this thing of, let's take an emotion, which is the clearest aspect, you know, or like, this is my thought, or a thought is appearing in me. You see, the wave consciousness is seeing that the phenomena occurring in the body is like an added ingredient. It's not what it is, it's an added ingredient. You see what I mean? So I would say that would be the kind of clue of when, and I think it's more clear with emotions that people, you know, an emotion appears and there's more this identification with emotion, because it's an identification with the body, with the particle. And in the wave consciousness, it's not. It's an observation. Very, very different. An identification with the observation. Okay. Now, all beautiful. It sounds like the wave consciousness is the goodie. No, because what happens with the wave consciousness is also a great possibility of dissociation. You see, people who tend to have trauma, what they do is that they go to the wave consciousness and they disconnect from the particle. So what happens is dissociation. That's something that, one thing is separation and self-observation. One thing is like the disconnect. Yeah. So trauma is actually very good to people who a lot of people who have trauma. The good thing is that they not so cling to the body a lot of times, because they've had this something that occurred that allowed them to have the separation, you know, not so much. Now the problem is when you're not able to participate with what's happening in the body. It's like this whole weird world occurring there. I'm just going to stay here observing, you know. So you're not bringing that virus into the bacteria. Yeah. So you can, and if this gets very serious, you can really detach from life, kind of thing. Okay, just to give you that one. Okay, guys. So
quick question, David. Aren't most people then particle consciousness? I don't know, many have this capacity to detach, and I know a lot of therapies, or well, a lot of research at least on therapies and on how to deal with emotions. They try to induce people to do this more and more, to observe the emotion without being it. But it's really difficult to do. It seems like most people seem to be glued to the emotion, as saying, I am sad, I am the emotion.
Yeah. Well, then you haven't been very close. You haven't been maybe very close to weird people like I am.
I know, yeah, I think that's why.
No,
I'm more in the, yeah.
yeah. No, yes, I think the great common denominator, it's more condensed into the particle. That
The
has
more in average, yeah, there's, yeah.
yeah, on average. That has to do with also an involvement in the like they get involved with the character kind of feeling, you know, like. But it creates them a whole bunch of problems because you see, if you can't observe what's happening to you, you can't transform it. So it's kind of like they stay very much fixed. See, what the wave is able to do is transform the particle. What the particle is able to do is the particle is able to make that wave consciousness so okay, wait. The wave consciousness, what it allows to do is for the particle to reform, reconstruct itself. Yeah. But the particle, what it's able to do is to actually make transformation. You see, because the one that makes transformation in the world is the particle. What the wave does is reconfigure the consciousness of the particle for that manifestation to be different. You see, so for example, the typical thing is that the particle consciousness tends to be people who are they have a great ability in making and doing and they tend to have that type of ability. Wave consciousness tends to have a more abstract ability, like a perspective ability, for example. They can see things in a different angle. You know, it has more to do with consciousness, but the particle has to do more with the manifestation. So we need both. It's like both are very important. Yeah. That dialogue has to, and in general, for example, there's a big need to begin to establish this differentiation for a lot of people because they suffer a lot. Like when you think you don't have possibilities of observing a thought. You are that thought. You know, that becomes a big problem because it's like you are a prisoner, complete prisoner to whatever appears in your mental picture. Whatever appears there, so that for a lot of people is a big difficulty, a great difficulty. So, and a lot of people are there, you know, they're trying to deal with that area and they're starting to create this gap, yeah, between what we could say really it's, if you go deeper, it's the consciousness of nothingness within each thing. If you go deep, that's what you find at the end. You don't find David at the back. You see it's an impersonal thing there. Okay, guys. So let's take that break, and now then we go into the calculation aspects of it. Okay. Yeah, well, the wave's consciousness is more solar. Laura, sorry, I didn't. Yes, it's more solar. Think about the sun. It's a wave, isn't it? So it's more solar. The particle consciousness is more mineral. It's got boundaries. It's got definition. It's got a weight. Is the left and the right as we see it on the stencil? The left and the right's always the same. It's the ma and the ba. The only thing is different ways of expressing that. It's always the same structure at the end, yeah? And to simplify it, feminine, masculine. The only thing in this, it's better to see it as me and tu. Yeah? Excellent. Okay. Just started the recording again. Sorry. Okay. I'm sure you received it. Yeah.
David, it's showing record on my screen.
Now, yes.
Oh, I
About
thought
a
it was.
minute ago, no. Sorry. Well, don't worry.
David,
I'm
I
sure you
hate to say it, I think the recording on this would be really important. Wonder if you can just maybe do a summary.
Okay, I'll do that. Oh, I'll do that. It's easy. This is easy to explain. And okay, so let's go back. Okay, so what we're seeing now is how this ring of fire is having a dialogue with our date of birth when we're born, when we appear as an individual cell, okay, and how it's having that dialogue. The future, meaning the purpose, the potential, and the finality in this configuration of this wave consciousness, which is densifying into a self-determination limitation, a body. It's another very technical way of saying a body, okay? Now, the first thing that occurs when we were born, this is my date of birth, okay? 21st of the 3rd, 1983, yeah. So when we're born, there is already a kind of like non-linear, meaning like instantaneous download of wave consciousness into the processor. Why do I say the processor and not the body, okay? Or the, you know, the full densification? Because the consciousness of the baby is more wave than particle, meaning it's like it doesn't have awareness of differentiation. So it doesn't really differentiate me and tu. It doesn't differentiate individuality of itself and of other, okay? So the first thing, like, this is each of these, it's like adding an ingredient to that clean consciousness of nothingness, you know? It's like adding an extra value to its conscious awareness, yeah? The first ingredient that it's going to add is the process, because this is downloaded instantaneously, but it takes a process of 707 days, which is the sum, 353 plus 354 is 707. It takes that time, that length time, to process that download. Meaning, this first moment is what we call separation, consciousness of separation. So it's the ability of that wave consciousness to begin to see that to see itself as separate in a separate vehicle, yeah, and separate from the rest. Okay, so there's a separation of tu and me. Okay, but the first focus is going to be on me. The tu is going to be more like secondary. The tu, the context, is going to guide the formation of me. Okay. Now, 707 days, in my case, knowing that I was born on the 21st of the 3rd, 1983. Actually, I'm going to put the year. That, in my case, was in the 25th of 2nd, 85. More or less 2 years. Okay. So that's where you see that the child, when it's about 2 years, it should. Normally, it's a process. It's not like 2 years and I've got a conscious. It's a process occurring. Yeah, that's what we have to understand. It does have a specific date, but it's a process. From the 21st of the 3rd, 1983 to this, so it's a process. So that process is gaining the ability of being conscious that I'm separate and conscious that I'm limited. Okay, but that limits are still very confused. You know, it's not very clear because the child still doesn't really have the awareness of the reach of that limitation. And the example I put before was like the fire. Like it's going to have to burn itself. Oh no, I put the cat. No? So it's going to stroke the cat, but it doesn't know. It doesn't have the reach of its limitation. So at one point, it's going to play with the tail. And the cat's going to bite. So, okay, that's the reach of that limitation. See? So that's what it's doing all the time, especially in this period here. It begins before, but especially it concentrates in this period here. Yeah. It's not rigid. Yeah, it's a process. So it's not like here it's where it starts and here. It's very specific in the dates, the days of year. That's very specific. But the process is like more a rainbow. Okay. You know how it goes from one color to another. Good. I think more or less, yeah. That was the thing. So from 707 to 1064, we have this process of another ingredient. It's not only that I'm aware that I'm separate, that I'm limited, I begin to become aware of the reach of my limitations. So beautiful. And that, in my case, occurred in 86. Okay, in this year. So the first thing, now we've got the configuration of the lift. Now we have to do what I call this is it from here to here, which is the me. Yeah. That's where it's a different movement. This whole movement, it's about, how can I say? It's about the management, for the formation of the management of my limitation. So it's kind of like the process of self-responsibility, of beginning to have the ability to respond within my limitations. You see? So there we have different moments, 358, 359. But what I want you to understand that it's like there's a kind of common denominator in these ones occurring here. Yeah, they all on the left mean it's all about the me. It's all about the limit. It's about the limit. Yeah, it's about the particle. So we want to formate the particle, and here we reach kind of a integrated particle awareness. Yeah, so I'm connected with the particle. The wave is connected with the particle. Then it's going to interconnect with the environment, the context within a system. The second is the one. Laura, I'm not sure in what context you said that. The second is the one.
No, I was responding to Susan. No, that was, yeah, it's fine.
Okay, good. So is this kind of clear? So one thing, separation consciousness of the reach of the limits. This is management. That is difference. You see, once I know which is my, let's put it this way. I sometimes use this analogy. I go into a house, and the house is a full house. But they're going to give me one specific room, okay, out of that house. So the house is a system, but I have a position in that system, okay? So the first thing is to know that which is my room and which is not my room. Okay, excellent. But now I want to discover the qualities of my room, meaning its limitations, its reaches. Okay, the sun comes out here, so I'm beginning to discover the room. Now, this part here is knowing the qualities of my room. How am I going to manage it? Can you see the difference from this? Now, how am I going to manage it? I'm beginning to ask that question because I already know which is my room and which is the quality of my room. It's stupid if I start thinking about what to do with my room if I don't know how it is. I don't know the dimensions, etc., etc. Yeah. So first, I have to have the consciousness of the limitations, at least minimally. Yeah. Now, from this 1064 days, we begin this process here up to here. But let's go from here to here. We're going to hit the third, and that would be 1064 days plus 358. Okay. Which in my case is the 10th of the second. Sorry, let me put the the number of it's 1,422 days, okay, of life. In that case, what happens with me, it falls on the 10th of the 2nd, 87. So here I am, more or less like 4 years old, okay? Now, this is the first movement within the management, okay? So the first thing actually that's gonna happen is that I'm gonna play around with the room. I know the limits, I know where the sun, but I'm gonna play around. So that's where the playing to discover the management of the individuality. That's why it's so important for children, the playing, you know, playing around. And playing is a way, and playing as someone else, is a way of differentiation, of seeing my quality. Because what has to end up here is the self-awareness of the particle, at least the first formation of it. Yeah. Okay, so this is more also we call it communicating within that limitation. So you're communicating within the limitation. You're playing around. Now, what happens when you begin to play around? You begin to see what works and what doesn't work. You know, you're decorating things. You're putting the bed in one side, and you're looking at it, and you're playing around. But once you're playing around, you begin to enter into something else, which is to begin to have an awareness of your bedroom, like what works, what doesn't work. You see what I mean? You begin to see which is the strong points, which is not so much the strong points, but you don't see that when you see the limitations. You see that when you start actually trying to work within that limitation. Yeah. Okay. So that would be the 4 parts. So second is the awareness of the reach of the limitation. 3 is the communication or playfulness within that limitation. Okay, playing around within that limitation. It's like a new toy, and you see how it works. It's a new app. You know, you download it, you see it has a certain limitations, and you play around, see how to go. But then when you play around, you start to this is the thing. You play around and you start discovering, you know, the thing. So it's like the wave consciousness discovering, okay, I've got these buttons, you know, kind of thing. So this occurs when it's 1,422 days plus 359. Yeah. And in my case, well, and that occurs on 1,781. Just something interesting, is that 78 in the Spanish word error sums up 78. So it's kind of like you're discovering the error or a mistake is a limitation. That you have to find the error to be able to work upon it, you see? So it's like discovering the error within that biological, you know, machine. Okay. So in my case, this falls upon on the 4th of the 2nd, 88. Good. So here I am, 2, 3, 4. I'm about 3, 4, 5 years. And from 5 to 6, actually, it's from 5 to 7. Okay, let me put these other ones here. This here is, it's really a transition. Yeah, and the membrane is doing that transition because it's going from the integration of a formation of the particle, like an inner connection, and now it's moving to an interconnection with the, okay? So that is, there's a kind of like from 5 to 7, there's this transition period, yeah. Famous 7, yeah, is like, it's a moment where you're kind of in a different, you're opening to something different. I'll show you why, because this is what the psychologists call the formation of the ego, of the me. And then when it starts going into 7, it's a different period because it's not so egocentric. It begins to be another type of perspective, which is ethnocentric. You begin to be very much interested in your position in the family. So, and you begin to develop something which is called empathy. Empathy is to be able to read others, to read the context. Okay. So, okay, so let's go into 5, the 5th position, which is going from this kind of beginning to have the self-awareness, you have this integration moment here. So this is going to help you, what? The process of having this kind of like already formation of particular consciousness. And this is going to be 1,781 days plus 360, okay? Which is 2,141 days of life. And the date in my case is the 29th of the 1st. Probably you will see interesting dates. This is the birthday of the camera guy that's recorded Alejandra's. It's a friend of mine called Maxi, and he's the guy that recorded Alejandra's kind of events and things like that. Why am I going to say this? There's an interesting connection here. Okay, so this is like, okay, this is a membrane moment. Yeah, it's like if you're touching the full configuration of the wave in the process of the processor and the particle. Now, when the particles has the formation, its next natural movement is to, and it's not like the child is not dialoguing with the context. The thing is, this is the movement. In this period, the context is giving references to the me, the formation of the ego, or the me. But in the next movement is how do I give a contribution? How do I participate over there? So it wants to develop what we call a system consciousness, not just a particle, not just the individual consciousness, a system, a participation, relationship consciousness. Yeah? This is where it develops its empathy. Empathy, not like, and empathy is it's an ability of kind of being able to sense where others are seeing reality. Before that, the child doesn't. It's like, I want mommy to be here because I want to be safe. I don't care, mommy. You know, it's not like it's more about their formation. But here it does change. Here it's where it's an age where really I'm interested in what mommy's thinking, how she sees life, how mommy and daddy, because ma pa, it's the references, how they see life, how they look at life, how they are giving me the parameters of the system that I'm working in. Okay, that's actually what the child is checking that. What is the parameters of the system that I'm working in? Not my parameters, but of the system, of the context I'm involved in. Good. So from here to here, okay, it's a whole different movement, and now it's entering into the right area, the tu. And here it's 2,141 plus 361, which is 2,502 days of life. And the date that, my date here is the 25th of the 1st, and the year in this case is 90. Yeah? 90. well, in my case, just to give you like, it starts to give you some clues and some things. Yeah? This date, do you remember what I explained at some point as the fitting point, I called it, which is when the for example, my positive is, actually this is going to be good to explain something later on. This is, my positive frequency is 8, meaning it's the 80th day of the year, but there's a negative 200, and so there's the days, the amounts of days that the year has to end, which is not 285 days. Now, there's going to be a day in the year which is where it's the other way around. It's in positive 285, and the negative is 80. Okay? That is called the fitting. It's punto encaje. I'm looking for a translation. Like it's like the fitting point, like to fit in. Yeah. Why do they call it that? Because that's where your negative is seen positively. Okay, that's kind of like a possibility. The negative is normally it's like that, like the blind spot. You don't see it. It's making this work, but you can't see it. Like, but in this day you can. Well, this date here, yeah, falls on the missing point, the matching point, the fitting point of Alejandra, yeah. So, which is the 25th of the 1st, and this is connected with the camera guide. So there's something related with these two dates. Okay. The 25th of the 1st is your partner's birthday?
Yes, yeah, and it's funny because he's the one who found Alejandra knew first. Yeah. He's the one who saw the videos and then sent them to me.
Well, does he know that his birthday is the fitting point of Alejandra?
No.
Okay. It's interesting. Like, I'm not sure if he's still following it, but.
No, he's busy renovating the house. He hasn't followed, or I'm telling him a few things here and there, but he was doing all the first video. He doesn't speak Spanish, so he did the videos with a translation, and then he did your videos. And then at first I ignored him. This was a while ago when he was annoying me with this. And then I started more following, and now I'm telling him a few stuff, but he's not, well, most of the things are in Spanish anyway, but yeah. So when is Alejandra's birthday then?
Her birthday is on the 6th of December.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Which is,
now I get it, yeah.
The positive frequency of this day is 25. Okay. And the negative is minus 340.
Right, yeah. Yes. It's, yeah, yes.
Alejandra is the other way around. Her positive is 340 and her negative is 25.
Right. So yeah, it's the opposite, exactly. Funny, yeah.
That the second day of the event in Portugal is on this day.
That's why I'm not going, because it's his birthday.
Well, it's.
And that's why it's on that date. Okay, I was thinking, why does it have to be on his birthday? It's a weekend, and okay, yeah, interesting.
Maybe tell him, look, I'm going to give you a very romantic gift. We can celebrate.
That means I'm going to have to translate all the time. I'm going to go crazy. It's really.
I'm not going to do it.
I know, you know how hard it is to translate. But well, also funny, I'm from '83 too, so the same year, not the same date.
The same year, yeah. There's quite a few people. Maxi is from '83, another friend of mine. There's a lot of people who are from '83. Carla, my wife is also from '83.
Remember she said that, yes. But I'm 1609, different date.
1609.
September, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so well, you begin to see these kind of links to different points in time. Yeah, it does take time. I didn't see, like, it took me quite a lot of time, and there's so much that this tells me a lot. 61 is 61 is South Africa plus Spain. Spain is 34, and the negative of this is 340. So, and I have a big involvement with Spain and blah, 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 a lot of different things that you begin to discover, but you know, it does take some time. You know, it does take some time. Okay, so, well, okay, now let me see. Now, what is this movement here? Like, what is the nature of this movement? It's going from the particle formation to begin to, if this was to communicate within me, the limitation, this is to begin to communicate within tú, the context. And it's a communication of establishing, how can I say, it's kind of like, this is kind of saying, I'm going to talk with you because I want you to give me parameters, not about myself, because I've already got them. I want parameters about my family, because the family is the first system that a particle consciousness is going to be involved in. Yeah? The family, the group, okay? But that is a fractal of other levels of system, yeah? But it's the most important first system is the family, yeah? So it begins that communication with the parameters, yeah? And it starts to absorb them. So depending on the parameters of the family, it starts to absorb them, yeah? And that's where it's kind of like, hopefully a child is not born in a fundamentalist Christian family, you know, like hopefully at least maybe they got an artist or somebody or a scientist or some other kind of, because they absorb completely the parameters here of the context, yeah. And sometimes it's even good to have a very kind of rigid, it depends, it's good because in the next, no, I'm not going to go into that because I'm going to go far away. Okay, let's just say that. So you see, I begin to play with those parameters, and here, sorry, this would be the absorption of it. So this is like communicating with the system. This is where I start to absorb the parameters of the system, okay? Which is not my parameters. That's why it's the development of empathy, because it's like things that the way that mommy operates, the way that daddy operates, I can begin to see it as not the way that I operate, because we have different parameters. And the system has a parameter which joins us, yeah. There's an informatic computer language which is in a database. There's something which is called clave primaria, primary key, the primary key, and then the foreign key it's called. Okay, so what is the primary key? It allows that identity within the database to define itself. It's called primary key. But then it has to communicate with other identities in the database, and it needs other types of keys, which is called foreign keys. And why does it need foreign keys? Because it has to be able to have the ability to relate. Yeah. Look, what happens with a psychopath is the following. It gets locked in its primary keys, but because of some reason it stops its growth. It stops adding new ingredients to its consciousness, meaning it doesn't develop empathy. It doesn't develop the ability to see that there's other foreign, it stops having that development. So it's kind of like it stays in egocentric. It's like the world is here to serve me, which is very good for a child because it's developing its me, but it's not that good for an adult. You know, it's not gonna work. So in a database system, each identity, yeah, has to have a primary key to self-define itself, and from there it can have what's called foreign keys to relate. Remember the analogy of the anchor and the buoys? Remember that? Well, the anchor is like, this is where you establish the anchor, and this is where you establish the buoys, which is like links to connect with something that is beyond my anchor. But first I have to have stability here. So that's why the first thing that occurs in the development is to formate the me. Because if not, I'm going to be in relationship but unstable. Yeah. Okay, so the next step is, okay, so I start playing around, I start talking, communicating, and I start to adopt these and here it's on the 22nd of the 1st. Oh, no, sorry, here it is 2,502 days plus 362, which is the 22nd of the 1st. And 91. Okay. And that is 2864. 2864. Good. Okay, so what happens now when I have adopted that? What do I have now? I have me parameters. I have the parameters of myself. I have the parameters of my system, and that's where I begin to see the potential of my space-time consciousness. Let me see how. So I see that I'm this tree, and I begin to discover that I'm linked with this group of trees. So what do I have there? The consciousness of the part and of the whole. So I know the reach of the potential, not of the limits, of the potential. So it's like I see up to where that's where I see that's the limits of the world for a child. So the child is not going to see beyond that. It's like the world ends where my family ends, kind of thing, because that's where the awareness reaches. So so it already has what we call a space-time consciousness. Elaborated, okay, or the potential of it. Yeah. Good. Let me give like a business. So I see how much money I got, limitation. And then I start seeing a type of business I can do, the qualities I have. And then I start seeing the market, what's needed in the market, in the system. And when I see the money I got, the credit, my ability, and I see the market, what do I have? The reach of my potential. But first I have to know how much money I got. Then I have to know which is my ability. And then I have to know more or less how the market is working. And there, between those two, here's like, I can see where I have the full scope. Yeah. So that would be the position 8. Where the 2,864 plus 363, which is 3,227 days of life. Okay, in the date, in my case here, is the 20th of the 1st. The day that I arrive. I leave here to go to Portugal. Let me see, 20th of the 1st. 92. And okay, so what's this last one? Because once you've opened all this, now you have to go back to the processor. This is what we call the integration of the purpose of my beginning. Okay, that's why it is number 9. So what is number 9? It is 363 plus 353. It's like, this is an integration movement. It's really integrating the whole journey. That's where you end what we call space-time consciousness, where that's when you integrate it. That's like the full. Can you move your camera a bit? There. So 9, and the days of life is, this is really interesting number. I'm gonna 3,580. When you are 3,580 days old, that is the moment that you finish what we call the base tumi, the base tumi, or the structural tumi or the foundational tumi. 3,580 days. Now, look, the number is very interesting one because it's got the 3 and the 5 synchronized in a 0. A 0 is something that ends and begins something, always. A 0 is something that ends and begins something. That's why 10, it ends the series, but it begins the next. You see? So 0 is something that it's like the 365th day of the year. It's a 0 because it ends something and it begins something. So it integrates, but then it begins a disintegration into another lap. Okay, that's what I'm going to see more in the next module. Is that this first lap is the formation of the particle of the child. The second lap is the formation of the teenager, the teen. The third lap is the formation of the adult. And then that repeats itself in a fractal, like 3, 3, 3. So like 3 laps make a group like that. Just for you to have that there, okay? But this is the most important one because it's the foundational, okay? My date here, which is the 7th of the 1st, 93, which is more or less when I left South Africa to go to Spain. It's like that I finished my configuration there. And in my case, the negative of this day is -358, which is kind of, it's in accordance to this number. So what do we end up here, yeah, with 9? We end up with the purpose, like the direction more or less, of this whole journey here, which is to the integration of the formation of space-time consciousness, meaning consciousness of the way. Most of the time, that is kind of, I think you kind of recognize it further on. You have it very like unconsciously. Consciousness of the particle and how the particle works on its self-definition and its interrelationship. So that you got the kind of the whole story of it. Now, oh wait, let me stop there. And I can say that it doesn't get more complex than this, yeah. This is kind of like we're hitting like Stephen Hawking kind of level of this, yeah. But at the end, if you see at the end, the basis of this is very simple. It's not, you know, that's where, like, if you have got that simple basis, you're not going to get lost in the complexity. You're just going to add value. The complexity is adding value to the symbol, not losing the symbol, not, you know, because at the end it's still the 4 quadrant, the ma, the ba. It's still that, but just with a lot more added value, yeah. Probably it'd be good to take a break now. And now I'm going to explain 2 things that we can extract from here. It's 2 different types of cycles, yeah? Or in Spanish it's called tránsito. En English, tránsito. Laura, tránsito. El transitar, tránsito. Right. Well, one is it's a process that happens each year, transit, yeah, the transit, or the process of touching these going through the fiber of these dates, it's like, you know, each year you celebrate your birthday, yeah? Well, because it touches the same fiber of when you were born, but you're not, it's not, how can I say, you're not reliving, you know, you're adding value. You're connecting with that moment of foundation, but you're extending it, yeah? Well, the same thing happens. There are two cycles of this. One is what we're going to call, I like to call it position or revision. It's like to see where you are, okay? To see where you are. And the other one is reconstitution. It's reconstructing that position. So it's position and reposition. So those two cycles, which is 2 cycles of 49 days in the year. And it depends on your birthday. So all these dates, I can give it to you very, very easily. You just, if you can give me your, and send it to me by WhatsApp, because I'm gonna forget. If you David, could you send me a photo of my dates of the Dumi, and I'll send it to you, okay? Because now I'm gonna forget. And that's what we're gonna see in the next part, because what's interesting of this is not only to see, it is interesting to see like more or less where was I in those ages. It is interesting to see that, but I think what's also interesting is that you touch those dates every year. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you've heard about this. It's called anniversary syndrome. People who have a repetition of things occurring on the same date. It's called anniversary syndrome. Or that on a specific date, for some reason, they feel very depressed, for example, and because there is something that has a registration of that date, and it's kind of like it touches on the fiber of that date. So they have very similar, not in the content, but in the deeper aspect, they go through something very similar. It's called, the psychologists call it anniversary syndrome. Yeah? Well, it's something like that. It's like you go through those points and you're touching that key. It's like each of these is like a key to a door of your neurological structure, like a key to the door, okay? But that door can open, can close. It's the key, yeah. So we'll see that. Let's take now. Could it be somatic memory? Probably it's. I don't know what somatic memory is, but I can imagine that it's something in your cells have somatized. Yeah, and it retains a memory. And that is triggered sometimes by, I'm not sure, sometimes it's triggered by, you remember that the day that your father died, that the cat, you had a cat or whatever. So whenever you see a cat, you have allergy kind of thing, okay? But there's other levels of registration in our consciousness. That is probably the more biological registration, but there's also a digital registration, which is connected with dates. It's connected with that other aspect. So whenever it touches that date, the soma appears. Yeah. Somatitar. Soma. It's like it's condensing in the biology. Yeah? Excellent. Let's go for a 15-minute break. Is that all right? 15 minutes. And then let's go with the last part, which I don't think it will take too long. Yeah, we'll go with that part. So you've made it up to here. How is it? Is it probably this? It'll be good also just to leave it there and watch it again. See your numbers, see your dates. And what I recommend when you do that, don't try to interpret, just kind of see it. Like if something pops up, great. If nothing pops up, great. But don't try to interpret too much, because that's where you start making things up. Yeah, that's my recommendation. Like it took me quite a while to start seeing different things of, I just had it there, like, okay, it's interesting. And then it started to talk to me. And then I started to see other relationships with other things. It was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, and where it is in the year, etc. But it does take, it's Chinese, yeah? Don't pretend that you talk it. You just learn it slowly, yeah? Excellent. So 20 minutes, yeah? Just a question, that first part that I missed, I think I kind of, I explained it, yeah? I gave the idea that it was, okay, excellent, okay. Okay, guys. Yeah, I'm scatty today. Okay. Guys, let's do it again. So now we're going to see these two periods I was talking about, the position and the reposition, okay? The revision of the position and the reconfiguration or the reposition, yeah? Before I was kind of, Bird just put it in. I need an external memory. You see, like the computer have external memory. Well, now it's not external memory anymore. Now it's Dropbox. It's gone wave consciousness now. It's not particle consciousness anymore. Well, before I was putting the year, yeah, to see the sequence here, the years that this was occurring to me in the foundational Tumi. But after, once we finish the 3,580 days, we're going to be able to, in a way, go through these dates again, the foundational dates. So that's why I took away the year. You see, there's no year anymore. Now it's just the day and the month. Because now I want to see it as a structure of dates. So how it repeats every year. Yeah. So as you can see when I'm actually going from day 0 to 707 days, I'm going in this direction. Yeah. But when I'm going to see my position, yeah, I'm going to do the revision of my position each year. It's actually going to go the other way around. So the first date we're going to go through in the year, in my case, it's the 7th of the 1st. Yeah, the 7th of January, okay? The second date is the 20th of January, and so on and so forth. That's why I said I finish, which is the last date, the 25th of the 2nd, which is like, that's where I end the revision of my position. Yeah. By the way, somebody's going to come to my house in a second, so I'm going to have to. This is the homemade. I'm going to have to pause it a second, go down very quickly, and come up. That's why I said in the 25th of the 2nd, which is 2 days after I finish the talk when I go to Holland, which is the 22nd and the 23rd. Well, the 25th I'm finishing. And this day is also one of the days, I think it was, when was the event in Holland? It was the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Okay, just a second, yeah? Recording. The event is 22nd and 23rd of February, but David is coming on the 21st. I think on the 25th, yeah. So, but very close there. And the event that happened in Holland was the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of 2017, I think. No, 2018. Yeah, it's going to be 2 years from that event. Look how important also this 3-5 with Portugal, yeah, 3-5-1, and this 3-1. Just so what was I gonna say? Okay, so look at this. How like I'm just gonna put a timeline. So if I take a timeline, this is day 0 of a year, 365. I'm going to be in starting my revision in January, like pretty early in January, the 7th of the 4th. From the 7th of January up to the last day, 25th of February, I'm going to go through the process of what is called or revision of the position or whatever. It's like a revision, yeah. And it's kind of like going from tú to me. So the revision tends to be something out there. There's a revision in here. So the external is helping you, but a lot of times with impact to do an inner revision. Yeah? Mainly to see where you are, like what's your position. That's why I say it's the revision of the position. Yeah? Okay, now there's another one, which is that each of these dates, when you go through your TUMI, it has what is called the fitting point. So with that positive, that negative becomes positive, yeah? And I'm gonna put it on each date. Wait a sec. Let me get mine. Here. So the fitting point of this, for example, is the 56th day of the year, okay? And so it means there's 309 days to end the year. So the question is, when is the 309th day of the year where the negative is 56? So it's the inverse. It's like the inverse compensation, yeah? To see the compensation of a negative, there has to be a proportional positive, and the other way around. So compensation, so it gives you the full orientation. Well, I'm going to put these in red. How about red? And for me, it's the 5th of the 11th. This date here, the 5th of the 11th. This is the 13th of the 11th. This is the 20th of the 11th. This is the 20th of the 11th. 26th of the 11th. This is the 2nd of this, the 6th of the 12th, Alejandra's birthday, 9th of the 12th, the 11th of the 12th, and the 24th of the 12th, Christmas Eve. Okay, so now when we go into seeing these dates, which is the first date we're going to find? Like, which is the first date we're going to begin? This is called the reposition, or the constitution of the reposition. Why? Because you can only reposition yourself from the negative, not the positive. Okay, so it's what I said about if you want to change the program, you don't go to the positive, the express. You go to the coding, the negative coding. You go to the negative of that. Okay. So, but well, in my case, in the year, first there's a revision, and then, but see that in this one, in the revision, it's this way. The dates. The first date is this, and the last date is this in the year. But here it's the other way around. The first date is going to be the 5th of the 11th, yeah, and the last date is going to be the 24th of the 12th. Meaning, at this moment now, I'm going through this stage, this period, this moment in time. So what happens to me is that in my case, my reconstitution happens very close at the end of the year, which is also the Ring of Fire. Yeah. So, and that's going to go from the the 5th of the 11th up to this 24th of the 12th. And here we have the revision of the position. Here we have the constitution of the reposition. Yeah. So that allows you to have a revision of the state of your neurological structure, and then you can reconfigure it. But upon the definition that you're always going to have, we always going to have the same definition. We're not determined, but we are defined. Okay. So why are we not determined? Because we can reconfigure it. But why I say we define? Because we have a specific kind of flavor. We bring a specific flavor. It's always going to have that essence of that flavor. Yeah. In this case, this is how kind of like, and then I have this kind of gap here between both of them. Yeah. So if you guys can go to the WhatsApp group and see the photo that I just I added. This is Gabi's. We're seeing Gabi naked in her digital. So if you see, it doesn't. It would be good if they put numbers, you see, but you see where it says Tumi, okay, and then it says position 353 at the top. That is number 1, okay, and if you can see, there's a date at the top, which is the 19th of the 9th, 1964. That is the date in which Gabi was 707 years old. She's a very old person, days old, yeah? Okay, so there she has the date and the year, and then she can, what you can do, Gabi, is just, you take you just take the date, and that gives you the date of the positive expression of this position. Now the negative is the date underneath, where which it says the 12th of April in 1964. As you can see, in her case, the negative occurred before her birthday. Before she was before her birthday, before she was 707 days old. Then, okay, so then we continue, and the next one is 357. Can you see it says 357, 100, and in brackets it says 1064 days old. Okay, and the frequency of that day is 254. 254 is the frequency of that day, and the negative is 11918. That's why I say the Tumi, it's like basically you're seeing the whole thing expressed. That's why I say it's got the maximum complexity, because it's got the maximum amounts of ingredients. It's got all the ingredients practically, yeah. So that and you can also see the feminine calendar where it's positioned, a whole bunch. There's a lot more things you can see, but let's just keep it simple. 11th of the 11th of September 1965 is the positive. That's when she is 1064 days, and the negative is the 21st of April 1965. So this means that Gabi, she is going to be going through during the months of the middle of April until the end of May, more or less, she goes through her reposition. And from the beginning of August until the mid of September, she's got her revision. Yeah, so she's got it the other way around. Sometimes people, it coincides, it matches together, so it all depends, yeah? What was I gonna say? I'm gonna say something. Remember I said that in the revision, it's kind of like the tú is doing a revision of me. Now, in the other one, it's me it's more like me to the world, okay? So it's more always a relationship in space-time is from the context to the particle, from the particle to the context. It's a feedback. It's a give and take, we can say. Well, the same thing happens here. So in the reposition, it's more about something that you bring from within out. Okay, and in the revision, it's something out that kind of makes you see something in. Okay, so that's the quality or characteristics of it. Yeah, and good. I guess this would be it. Any questions? Can you see the reading? And then it ends again in 353. Why? But that 353 is not this one, it's this one, the 9. It's the 3,580 days. There. That's where it ends here. So kind of like what I recommend, if you want to just do it like, sometimes I say it's nice just to write the dates down. Just write it down. To do your, do your tumi. Not just kind of like the same way that you are gardening or something. It's like you just write it down, and whatever triggers, perfect. Whatever it doesn't, maybe it's triggering it in the negative, so you just leave it there. You do it. You do it like that. I like to also see it in a line. It just gives me a linear order of it. And then you can just kind of see those dates and pay attention to when you're going through those dates without any speculation, but just kind of like, it just gives you, how can I say? It just gives you a different perspective from which to look into those periods. Yeah. I would say I tend to look into 3 dates. My birthday, of course. The negative of my birthday, or when my negative is positive, the fitting point, the conception, and then these 2 periods, yeah, and it just gives you a very much acute awareness of the year that you're going through, and just see how reality emerges. You got the digital. Now let's see what happens in the analogical, yeah? So you've got kind of like the coding of it, but now let's see how it's expressed in your, and when you got the digital and the analogical, you can process the full awareness of it. Because you can't just make sense of life or what happens to you. You have to have a perspective of what's happening to you. So with the perspective, you need parameters. Is one of the periods more challenging in terms of how we live it. In my case, I cannot talk about my case. It tends to be a bit more challenging, a bit more challenging. I'm looking for the right word of how I live it. It's a bit more apretado. Like it's squeezing, like, not a lot of space, tight. This one, the reposition. In my case, it tends to happen at this period of the year that I have very similar kind of, now it's kind of, I understand the management of it, but it's a bit more tight in my a lot of people tend to say this one, the revision. Yeah, because this is where you see where you're really at, your limitation. Yeah? But this is also challenging because this is where you kind of see what you can provide, what you can give, what you can. So, and this is this is very close. This is very kind of far away how it happens. That's my experience. This is more like if things are happening in a more unconscious here. Things are more in a conscious, more here. But it does depend on the people that I speak. It does depend on different things. And this is the period, but understand that you're touching these points. So, for example, if you hear in this date, yeah. So what is that? It is the consciousness of separation. So it's like revising your consciousness of separation, or reconstituting your consciousness of separation, because it's not always the same. It's always different. The consciousness of the reach of your limits, of and this period here is kind of like the management. So understand that that's also, it's and each of these are 49 days. It's always going to be 49 days, 49 days, 49 days, which can, like I said, they can mix together. So you guys have survived the Dumi, and if you're still alive, congratulations. There's not many who make it up to here. And in the next class, what I'm going to see, although it does have a complexity, but I think this is more, seeing this, what I explained today is more complex. But you see is that you have, this is a foundational Dumi, but then you have a repetition of 3,580 days. So it's like cycles of 3,580. And those are going to make up like a development pattern, which I began to see that it has a lot to do with what the psychologists call the stages of development. It's very much aligned with it. Yeah. So there are stages of development would have to do, and each stage of a development is adding an ingredient to your consciousness. Yeah. So it's like extra value, each of them. What you do during the year, you're not adding value really. What you're doing is revision of where you are and reconfiguring where you are. The extra value is the days of life you have. That's the extra value, okay? And that has to do with these cycles of 3,580, 3,580, 3,580, which make up 3 periods of the formation of the child, the development of the teenager, and the integration of the adult. And that has to, and there are certain stages of development that occur in each of them, which the map that I use to give the names of these is a map that comes from a guy called Ken Wilber, who has what's called the theory of integral theory, and he sees, and he has he made an integral map of the stages of development, which takes a whole bunch of maps of different psychologists and integrates them into one kind of map. And it's it's a very well organized, very well, very American, very practical, very one. So I use that one, and he talks about 7 stages of development. I include an 8th one, which is, I also give them different names. I'll explain that the following day, but there's basically 8 stages of development: archaic, magical, power, mythical, rational, plural, integral, and one that I call structural. And it has to do with different maturities of the me, of the left and the right, of the me and the du. This is something that I began to develop from the knowledge of the dumi, seeing how the dumi occurs, and I began to see how it aligned. Because I studied this before, but I didn't relate it with the dumi until I started to see, and I said, wow, it coincides with the ages, very much so, especially the first periods. But so I'm going to talk a bit about that in the next module. I think you've got more than enough, with this. And this is just something that it's interesting to have there, and it's just another tool in the box, and people have more resonance with different tools. And at least for me, this tool has been very important to be able to organize, to be able to have much more fine parameters of seeing what we call cognitive development or neurological development. So for me, this was very useful. And I learned a lot from it from a person here from Argentina. It's called Sebastián Llanos, who has not very good videos, but they are in Spanish. So I'm not sure if you want to look into them. Have an extra Spanish lesson there. So probably maybe when you guys start doing your dumi, you can maybe draw this and all that, and you start putting the dates. Oh, good. It's not there yet. Okay, so you've been translating them. That would be actually quite interesting because he really explains it very good. So what was I going to say? So you start just kind of seeing your dates, but probably watch this again, dosify the watching, watch it again, and do the dumi, just seeing the dates and just see what emerges. My recommendation is probably you're going to try and interpret it, it's natural, but see if something just dates hit you or something, and different dates hit you at different moments, It took me ages to recognize this one, of Alejandra. It took me quite a while. It just didn't pop up. So it pops up when it has to, and if nothing appears, you say, okay, that's it. There's no more to it. It probably, maybe it's touching. I remember, I think it was, I explained it to me once before the event of Holland. I remember now. And I remember, I think it was Ellis. I think it was Ellis. And Ellis wasn't going to go to, I'm not sure if it was Holland or some other event. I can't remember. But well, I remember Alice, she kind of told me that like she wasn't going to go, but after explaining it to me that she didn't understand a lot of it, something activated within. Well, why does that happen? Because a lot of the activation doesn't happen through the understanding. Maybe aspects are filtered through the understanding, but really what this kind of more digital negative tools does, it's touching acupuncture points of your negative, and that probably is opening areas, and you wake up the following day and what happened? Something changed because it touched that area, and then sometimes you can't explain it very well, but it opens up an expression in the positive.
So I have something to say or to share in that regard, because Sebastian was here in the UK, and he gave a workshop on the Tumi, but for me it was a bit too soon. I've only been in the logic for 2 years now at most, and anyway, I didn't feel I understood so much, although I could follow the logic of the numbers, but what they meant, it was a bit bizarre to me. But the next day I woke up after he left and I started listening to Alejandra, and I couldn't stop. And before that I had never listened to her. Only you or Sebastian, because I couldn't get her. She talks so weird. I could get some stuff, but yeah, a lot no. And then suddenly the next day I started to listening to her, everything was very clear. So something exactly what you're saying was hit there that I didn't notice consciously, but that opened up something where I could capture other type of information. Yeah, and then things with the date started to come to me more than, yeah, but it's not always, yeah, if I start looking at them, it doesn't work somehow, I get, yeah.
Well, that happened, probably those who've been a bit in this process, that happens quite a lot, because you see, the communication here is like the positive aspect that you see, you understand, which is very important, because it's that which your particle is able to translate of your wave. So it is important, but a lot of things are touching your wave, and the wave, the acupuncture points that are touching your wave, it's something that you begin to see it after, kind of thing. You know, I'm still seeing things. What the events for me that happened in Holland was very important, but it was more important after the events, and I'm talking about like a year after, than the actual event. So that's very common, that, you know, and it takes maybe one night, maybe it takes more time, but this does. So also be open to the negative acupuncture that's occurring, you know, just available. Because the problem is, if your mind is saying like, I don't understand, it kind of closes that canal, you know. I'm not saying wish believe. I'm saying there has to be an openness, because if not, that there's something in the negative that wants to express and increase the positive awareness. But there has to be a flexibility, yeah. Then a criteria, of course, in the positive, you know, but there has to be that openness. So, and I remember that of Alice, and she said, I don't know, you know, you explained and something just activated, like a resonance, to go to the event. I'm not sure if you remember that, Alice. Remember?
Yes, I remember. Yes.
So,
nice.
You know, because Alejandra is speaking a weird language, because she's like more speaking from the digital. It's changing, but we are more understanding things from the concrete. Each person in a different level, but compared with Alejandra, we are all very much analogical. Yeah? She's very, very much, she's more, her awareness is more here than here. Now it's kind of densifying, you know? But what happens, a lot of people is more here, so they have to, the other way around, destructure themselves, yeah? So okay. Well, thanks a lot, guys. The next class, well, you must have the date around there, yeah? But if there's no questions, send me your birth dates, and I'll be sending you that. You can also do the calculation of it. Very interesting to manually. This is kind of like just making it easier, because you do have to do quite a lot of calculation. But that's also, if you want precision, because this is an app that's going to calculate it very precisely. Yeah.
Next 26th September, yeah, and we're already into the last 13 days, and I'm particularly interested in knowing how we could use each of those 13 days, you know, in the ring of.
Okay, just to be clear, like when you say use, it's not like, when I say use, it's because you open a perspective. So it's a tool of consciousness. Yeah. Okay, that's the first. So it's something from where to see what's happening in an increased. It's like adding pixels to your camera. Yeah. So that is the use, because a lot of people are like, can I change my husband or something? You know, like No, it's not that kind of way. It's more a point of observation. It gives me more richness of points of observation from where to, to see. Oof, no, I don't think so. The events in Portugal translates into English. See, events, it's 3 full days of about more or less 6 hours. So if Laura has a lot of spare time, she can start the translating. That is like, if someone had to translate that, and knowing that an event is very non-linear, it's like it's not like Alejandra goes and says, okay, well, I've got this program and I'm a lot linear. Alejandra's just kind of like, let's see what happens, because it's actually it's an emergence. Her events are emergences. It's not so good to go to events to understand the tools in itself. It's not very good as instructions. But what happens is that things begin to emerge. This is something that, this year I've been very much having more like an instructions. But for the next year, at least in the English, I'm going to go back to how I was doing it before, where it's just going to be kind of like setting a date and just see what appears there, the conference in Holland is going to be kind of like that. Just see what emerges. It's very different because it's not so much about there can be an explanation here and there, linear, but it's just kind of seeing what pops up. And I'm going to kind of go back to that, because I think with the first course and this course, I think the toolbox is full. The toolbox is there. And if I don't remember how the toolbox works, I can just go back. How that tool works, I can go back there. There are other things, but this is the main tools that are required. Yeah? And now in the next, it's just using these tools to see, what occurs. In the Ring of Fire, you just kind of, the processor, and you're just doing kind of this movement, like an inverted clock of the last days of the year, where it's going from an integration to a disintegration and a foundation, which is the 365th day. Yeah. And just know that you're in that period, but it's not about trying to control your experience. It's about just allowing the experience to do what it does, and to have different optical glasses to see at it, to have a more enriched view of it. So I guess that would be the next class, 22nd of December. 22nd of December. Okay, going to be pretty close. 2 days from, look, the next class, 2 days after, I finish this. After the event of Holland, I finish this one. So I think there's going to be a relationship there. Okay, guys. Well, thanks a lot for your patience, your openness, and allow the negative do its work wherever it has to do it. Yeah. So thanks a lot, and see you on the last class, which will be the 22nd of December. Besos.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
David. Bye-bye all.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.